Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PBSE podcast. Steve Moore and Mark Castleman here, coming at you with episode 280. Good question today that actually takes the heat, I guess you could say a little bit. Hopefully, most people aren't feeling too much heat when they come here to the podcast. But the focus on today is not on addicts or partners. Focus today is on kids. And how do we navigate topics that are difficult in the sexual realm with them? Okay. We here at Dare to Connect are very passionate, not just about working on addiction and not just working about on betrayal trauma, although in couples healing, although those are obviously pillars of what we do in the Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples, as well as in the PBC podcast. But we are very passionate about holistic, healthy sexuality. In fact, in our D2C program for addict spouses and couples, we just completed filming on our healthy sexuality course, which encompasses 27 modules on every element of jumping into one's coupleship bedroom in a non-triggering or as at least appropriately triggering way as possible. One of those modules being around how to talk to your kids about this. And so when we had the submission that Mark's going to talk about here come in, we thought it would be good to bring some of that to bear here on a podcast episode for parents as they are navigating some of these things.
Yeah, we had this submission from a partner. Unfortunately, we see this too often. She describes a long-term marriage. Her addict partner has not taken recovery seriously. Obviously, he's done a lot of gaslighting and blaming, shifted a lot of the onus of this whole addiction thing onto her, lack of her being sexually responsive and all of his needs and just a lot of the things that we hear so often. And as a part of all this that's been going on for a long time, they have two teenagers, two teenage kids. And her really heartfelt desire, as you can imagine, is I don't want my kids to end up like this. And so how do I start to engage them in healthy conversation about sexuality? How do I start to, talk with them about what healthy sex looks like and doesn't in a relationship? And kudos to her. She said, I also want to do this in a way where I'm not bad-mouthing their dad. But she doesn't want to candy coat it or pull punches. I mean, obviously they've grown up in this family. They're not ignorant of the issues that have gone on between their parents. So obviously there needs to be some discussion and dialogue about the realities of that. And she can do it by keeping it to her side, right? Here's how it's impacted me. Here's how I feel about all of this. Here's what I hope for the two of you. So she's really asking us, how do I engage in a dialogue with these teenage kids and give them the best chance for, healthy sexuality and happiness and connection and collaboration in their future relationships. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And our heart goes out to this partner, and we know that she is not alone in this dynamic. And sometimes it's, it's the opposite dynamic with a partner versus an addict. And we really do empathize with that, but we applaud any spouse who is, in the midst of their own healing is also seeking, how do I safeguard my kids?
Mm-hmm.
How do we not replay this story, right, in the next generation? So we're very much passionate about this.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple things to talk about here. First of all, kids, and this is probably fairly obvious, but we're going to start with this present. Kids learning about or being taught about sex is not an option.
It's happening all the time.
Yes, and what we mean by that is we don't mean it's not an option for you as parents. We mean that, we are dealing sexuality is the most universally applicable topic on planet Earth to humanity. There are lots of topics that mean different levels to some groups of people. One's own sexuality, as well as how that is expressed, is a topic of universal importance to everyone who bears the term, Homo sapien.
Yeah.
And so understanding and dialoguing about it is critical. And your kids are dialoguing about it right now, in some way, shape, or form. Some of the latest research, for example, shows that 6 and below, in some cases, are the first time children are exposed to pornography. A recent study talked about, I can't remember the exact date range, but teens and young adults between the ages of 18 and 24 uh, admitted to, admitted to a shockingly high percentage. I believe the number was something like 83% admitted to accessing pornography weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, that's just the ones who owned it,
Yeah.
to say nothing of the people who denied it.
Yeah.
Okay, we are living in a time where your children are being taught. It is just a question of who's doing the teaching,
Yeah, exactly.
who and what, right? So that's important. If you are not stepping into this role, your kids, www.reallydumbidea.com, and anything in between will fill the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's, and as we talk about this, Steve, you and I have marveled a lot on Dare to Connect and in our own lives and all these years of, working as counselors in this field. When adults come to us, right, they're engaging in sexual intimacy. It's a regular part of their lives often. And yet there's this shame and awkwardness that surrounds it. We're having sex, but we can't talk about it.
Yes.
Right? We're engaging this, but we don't know how to dialogue about it. And one of the first, and this is going to be, this could present some especially hard things for this betrayed partner, right? Imagine that she wants to engage in this dialogue with her teenage kids, and yet look at where she's at in her own relationship and all the things surrounding that. It could present feelings of, who am I to talk to them about a healthy relationship, right? Based on this whole thing that has existed. Yeah, maybe she has some awkwardness and shame around these sexual issues because of her upbringing. I mean, there could be a lot going on here, and so it'd be really important for her to examine that before she approaches them. Where am I with all this? Um, Legitimately, she as a betrayed partner, she has the right to feel anger. She has the right to feel resentments, frustrations, a lot of different emotions going on that are absolutely legitimate. Does she want to bring all of those legitimate feelings, though, into dialogue with her kids about this topic?
Mm-hmm.
And that is an incredibly hard thing to walk that line. And kudos to her. She said, I don't want to just badmouth her dad. Right. As soon as I read that, I'm like, good for you. Good for you. That's because that's not something you want to bring into that dialogue with your kids. So just examining all of that can be present, right,
Yeah.
for anyone who's going to talk to kids about this.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and because kids mirror, right? They're emotional sponges. They, especially on topics like this, right? And the younger the age, the more true that is. They will adopt, incorporate, and take on whatever attitudes you bring to the table. And as Mark said, they are far more adept at reading you than you give them credit for.
Oh
They,
yeah, they're going to be reading the expression on your face, your body energy, your attitude. If you're uncomfortable, they're going to be.
well, and here's the problem: depending on the age, kids struggle on a neurobiological level to be able to assign feelings of awkwardness or discomfort or shame or whatever to themselves or to parents,
To
because
parents.
the caregiver can't be the one on in their head that is the problem, which naturally means that where does that association go to some degree to them?
Yeah, my parents uncomfortable. It must be me.
Yeah,
I must have done
absolutely.
something wrong. There must be something wrong with me.
So what does that bring us to? It brings us to the next bullet point. Please, for the love of all that's holy, do not wing it.
Do
Don't.
not wing these
These
conversations.
are not half-assed conversations that you have. I don't think that anyone listening to this would probably do that, but let's just say it for sake of obviousness. Please do not just try to rough ride this and I'm just going to make this happen. That is a recipe for this going very poorly. And once you make the impressions that you make, especially with those first few conversations, it's very hard to unimpressionate them, if that's a word.
Well, yeah, because of the nature of the topic itself, you know.
Yes.
If you're and we wish this was the case with this partner that wrote us, that she could actually collaborate with her partner about approaching the teenagers. It appears that that maybe is not the case, you know. But if you do have a sufficiently good relationship with your in co-parenting, we encourage you to have a dialogue first as a coupleship about the
Mhm.
topic. If you want to know if it's going to be awkward, embarrassing, or if it's going to be age appropriate, am I going to do this right? Practice on each other.
Yeah, if you can't talk to your partner about what you're doing with them in the bedroom, how well do you really think that's going to go with your kids?
Yeah, no, exactly.
I mean, seriously, that talk about the ultimate litmus test, right?
Yeah, practice with each other. The other side, and I wish, man, I wish the adults around me as I was growing up had known this one. This is an ongoing, natural, regular, evolving dialogue, not a one-time discussion.
Correct.
Because we need to talk.
Oh
We need
gosh.
to have the talk.
The talk. My gosh, everyone that's listening to this podcast right now, if you've listened to this within the 10-year time span of 2025 when this was recorded, is probably from a very similar generation where we can all relate to that idea of the quote unquote talk.
The talk.
And
Yeah.
that is such a bad approach. And
No,
Mark and I
because
speak from experience front with that.
yeah, Steve, you and I talked about it as we were preparing today. I remember as a kid, I can put it into words now, but I really do remember the feeling that I had. Here are these adults around me that have not invested in me in regular everyday dialogue. They've not been curious about my life. We don't engage in topics of discussion about all sorts of things in the world around us. Now they think they could come to me suddenly and just take one big giant leap to have this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had the words now as a kid, then I would say, "Excuse me, you haven't earned the right to come to me with this topic. You haven't invested in us in a regular daily dialogue and building that up. So no, we're not having this talk." That's what I would say today.
Yeah. No, well, really, and isn't that? I mean, isn't that true? I mean, we're talking about here, guys. Again, a subject that will have universal consequence throughout this child's life.
Yes.
Sexuality is just as important, although it looks different as when you're 15 as when you're 105.
Hey, everybody. PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys in D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Well, Steve, isn't it crazy? You've shared this before so I know you remember what happened when I think you were 13. I think you've shared. I remember the one talk my mother tried to have with me when I was 11.
I was actually about 11 or 10 as well, but yeah, go
Okay, you
ahead.
were 10 or
Yeah.
11. We both remember sitting here decades and decades and decades later, exactly what was said, what was felt, what it was like it was yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you
100%.
precisely. Talk about impact, right?
No, absolutely. 100%. Right? It's so true. And so again, what kind of message do you want to leave? Because it is just about, I would say it's more about how you say it, especially in those early stages, just as much, if not more than what you say.
I would completely agree. Yeah.
Because again, your kids are going to run into challenges with this, and you're laying the groundwork ideally as early as possible. We're talking, guys, to be clear, like 4, 5, 6. Okay, maybe even earlier, depending on the dynamic. Obviously, in an age appropriate way, and then that dialogue continues on because again, they're going to run into challenge, they're going to run into trouble, and when they run into trouble, you do not want their go-to be like, gosh, I don't understand this. I'm going to go to my friends. I'm going to go to the web. I'm going to go to Google AI or God for whatever else
Oh
is
yeah,
out
because I
there.
remember when this came up with my dad or with my mom, that was crazy, awkward, embarrassing, and I'm not going there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going there. The other thing that really, my wife and I have raised six kids, and I contrast these kinds of attempts on my part with my older kids versus my younger kids.
Mm,
And it's day and night. And I'll tell you one of the big differences. One of them we've already talked about. With my middle to younger kids, I and my wife tried to make, this talk about sexuality a regular part of our daily dialogue in a family. I mean, older kids, you would never have brought this up at the dinner table. Are you crazy? And I grew up in a house. If you dared to say even the word sex at the dinner table, you were in big trouble.
totally.
And so
Yes.
I carried that into my experience as a parent with my older kids, but not with the mid level and younger kids. We'd bring it up in just casual conversation. It was no taboo. You were not going to get in trouble, right? So that regular ongoing dialogue was super important and led into conversations with my younger kids. But the other part was more than just delivering a lecture or sermon or getting it out so I could check the parenting box that I'd talked about it.
Mm,
With my younger kids, I was really genuinely curious. We talk about leaning in with your partner and being genuinely curious, leaning in with your kids. I wonder how they feel about this. I wonder what they know and don't know. I wonder how this came up today at school and what it was like for them. I am really curious, and I'm going to ask
absolutely.
age appropriate questions and really let them see the genuine interest in me, in my voice,
Mhm.
in my face.
Mhm.
I want to know how you're dealing with this, right? Leaning
Yes.
in with genuine curiosity. Huge.
And they have to know you care.
Yes.
Okay, that's really important because and we can again speak from experience because of the background associated with this, especially if you've already had maybe less than stellar interactions with your kids. It's pretty natural for kids to associate either punitive action or shame with the dialogue around discussion.
Immediately.
All right, we're talking about this. That means something bad is going to happen,
Yes.
right? And so they need to be sent the message that this is really just that. This is a discussion. And we want to have them make where we can positive associations with that, right? It's important that they're not associating with something negative and they're not being like Mark was kind of associated with. For me, my dad again, he did his very best, but the whole conversation happened in his room, which was the closest that came to in our house of being like some sort of sanctuary chapel. And that just was not the right environment for this.
Yeah.
That's where you usually got punished. That's where you got in trouble. That's where we had really serious talks. And you couple that with his awkwardness around it, doing his very best that he could. And I remember the takeaway. I remember him saying the right things. You know what the takeaway was? He asked me, "Let me know if you have any questions," and I was like, "That will never happen."
Yeah. I ain't bringing this up again.
No, like that.
Uh-uh.
That was weird.
Well, and on the point of this, positive association, here's the, I don't know if any adult ever said this to me directly with these words, but it was communicated very powerfully, and especially in the religious settings that I was raised in. Okay, this whole sex thing, it's dirty, dark, and evil, but please save it for someone that you really care about and love. I mean, that was the competing message, and I wish someone had said, "Hey, you know what? You've heard sex is amazing. You can't imagine how amazing. It's one
Yes.
of those beautiful, sacred, awesome things. I mean, something to look forward to. Now you talk about making good choices. You talk about, saving it for the right person for the right time within the right setting of commitment. Absolutely. But it's fabulous. Man, I wish some adult had had a conversation with me about that.
For sure.
All it was associated with me was don't do this, don't do that. We better not catch you with this. You better not, right? All the don'ts, all the punitive, very negative. You can't, the consequences are going to be XYZ. That was almost the entire discussion.
Yeah.
Where was the beautiful, amazing, awesome side to all this?
Well, and there's so much more to say about this. We recorded not too long ago the D2C Academy, module on healthy sexuality and talking to your kids about it specifically. And so
It,
we
yeah.
can't go into it in nearly as specifically as we do there. We hope that you'll give the free 2-week trial a try with Dare to Connect at daretoconnectnow.com. Come try the Dare to Connect program. We'd love to have you come over and get more in-depth information about topics like this, including this. But, because there are so many stories and things we can't relate here for sake of time and get into about clients and about, me as a new dad, Mark is a very well experienced veteran dad, and everything in between. But is so making setting the stage, attitude, approach, all these things that we've talked about today are really important. One thing that is definitely crucial, we wanted to, I guess maybe we'll say just a little bit about the boundary side of this specific partner that wrote into us, right?
Yes.
And navigating this with with their addict spouse, and then we can talk a little bit about some resources. Um, so quick word on that because we know that's a big concern for her. Um, the situation that you find yourself in, partner who wrote us, and others like you, and we are sorry because it is not ideal. Teaching and dialoguing about these things is as a parent on a topic like this, where you're kind of more or less showing up as a single parent, is really a tragedy on multiple levels. First of all, it's not a burden that you should just be shouldering alone, but also, and I've had this conversation with clients before, addicts who have had a history with this, who come to grips with their own shame, who find healthy recovery, are no better are better poised than probably anyone on planet Earth to be able to have raw, real discussions about this with their kids. I mean, it's one of the silver line. Not that we'd ever want anyone to get into addiction to give them that advantage, but it's one of the reasons why you listen to this podcast, as Mark and I have experience in this. It's one of the reasons why people come to Dare to Connect, and it is one of the things I fully plan on employing with my 6-month-old daughter as well as my other kids that are yet to come. Is look, this is not just theory. Here are the experiences that I have had. Right here are the ways in which this has been really successful for me, and here are the ways in which it wasn't. And here are some of the struggles and the challenges that in an age appropriate, right, uh, level of detail appropriate way, based on your audience, of course. But I want you to be able to avoid those. And so I am here, not just to talk to you about the quote unquote birds and the bees. I'm here to help you in a subject that, me as your mom, I just never got much help about. So,
Yeah. And
um,
the other side that this betrayed partner is really in a wonderful position to talk about is letting her kids know that they are sovereign,
yes,
independent, human beings that get to decide who has contact with their bodies, who they engage with, when they have the absolute right to say no, how to set boundaries, what those boundaries look like, right? That her kids absolutely know how that whole world works. You are
Yes.
obligated to no one. If you've been married for 40 years, it doesn't that your partner does not have unfettered access to your body under any circumstances.
Yep.
Very powerful message to be communicated here.
Yep. Consent still applies. It's just
Uh,
as real. It's just as important. But I do think, but again, navigating kind of this single side of things, really, our hearts do go out to you. We would encourage you to be as upfront and as open as you can. Possibly, if it's appropriate, and again, every situation's different, so please don't take this for as gospel law. I mean, I was a kid who my dad passed away when I was 13. So, and he was by far the one that I was closest to. My mom and I could not dialogue about this kind of thing back then. Ironically, we can now, but then back then we could not. And so, if you have loving family members, I was very fortunate to have two uncles, one of whom also passed away early, who I was able to go to with these kinds of questions
mhm.
and to talk to about these kinds of things. And thank God for that. And so be on the lookout if you find yourself in a dynamic like this, partner, to be looking outside the little bit of a box. It is a tragedy that you have to do that, right? But please don't allow the absence, emotionally or otherwise, of your partner being invested in this discussion from having this talk, because it needs to happen. The only way you break the chains of this stuff is if we get real and authentic about these things. And we know that many addicts out there are, there was a time where, had I had kids, there was a time where the thought of sharing any of this, or even my kids knowing that there is any issue or anything going on, would have just been terrifying. To all the addicts who are listening to this in some sort of recovery, or who are feeling some sort of resistance to that, lovingly but firmly, we would tell you too bad, because that is part, not involving, not having those kinds of discussions about, at least in an age appropriate way, about some of the issues and challenges. We gave that up when we elected to engage in this behavior,
We did. And besides that,
addiction.
even though your kids may not know details, they know stuff's going on in his.
Absolutely. You are fooling yourself if you think your kids are not hearing the fights through the wall, or catching your wife crying, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
You are fooling yourself. And so it is critical that we shed light where appropriately it is needed, not just about this discussion, but so again, going back to the beginning, so that they're not internalizing discord within the relationship as something that they're doing or not.
Yeah. That's their
So,
fault. Yeah, exactly. And so with all that, we also have some resources for
yes.
parents that are extremely valuable. We're just going to kind of sound them off to you so you can go and look them up. One of them that's an excellent resource for teens, either for teens talking to teens, as facilitated by an excellent organization, or resources for parents to talk to teens, is called fightthenewdrug.org. Fightthenewdrug.org. We know the founder of that organization really well. Worked with them for many, many years. So that's a great resource for talking with younger kids. Can be really difficult with this topic, but we've already said younger kids are being exposed to adult stuff with regard to this. But there's a site called defendyoungminds.com. Defendyoungminds.com. Great resource. We know the founders there have put in a lot of wonderful work over several decades, but they're experts on how to talk to younger kids about all this stuff. So I highly
Yeah.
recommend that.
And the last two resources, the first would be is an outfit called Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes has evolved a lot over the years. They used to almost exclusively focus on creating filtering services for electronic devices for pornography and things like that. They still offer those services, and gratefully, they have come a hell of a long way since they opened up like 20 years, 25 years ago. But in addition to that, they also offer really extensive blog posts, house a lot of resources and links to sites that their people have gone through, that we definitely approve of, that offer kind of a really one-stop shop for whether you're dealing with little kids, teenagers, you have questions yourself, right? They have posts and resources on that site of all types and sizes. So if you go there, you can just kind of explore the site. It's very, very extensive. And then the last but not least one, and I know this will be shocking, freaking get over to daretoconnectnow.com. Okay.
It's true. It's true.
There is simply nothing that replicates an intimate dialogue and the kind of thing that we have there. As always, if you like the PBSE podcast, what if you could ask us questions? What if you could access resources and get feedback from other people in the program? What if you could have access to anonymous resources where you could be real and authentic and share your most intimate problems and issues in your marriage with all the perks of intimacy with none of the negatives of exposure? What if you could have a place like that? Well, there is one. Come on over to daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you come check it out. Again, there's a 2-week free trial for that. And we'd love to have you check it out. If you like the podcast, you will love the program. Okay.
Yeah.
daretoconnectnow.com is where you can find all that.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for being with us. As always, if you have questions for the podcast, send them on over to pbsepodcast.com. If you go there, you'll see that the Dare to Connect site comes up, but at the top is the PBSE banner. Just click on that, and you can fill out a form. And then, as we said, come on over and check out the Dare to Connect program as well. All right. Take care, and we will
Absolutely.
see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Be well, everyone.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.